Welcome back to the Coaches Unscripted podcast. I'm your host, Trey Belcher. With me, as always, my tag team partner in the Iron Revival, Corey Smallwood. How's it going, Corey?
I don't know what you just said, but I'm doing all right.
It's what ChatGPT named us.
Oh, okay.
So joining us today is friend of the program, renowned speaker and owner of Cutting Edge Fitness in Redmond and Issaquah, Washington, Dan Kleckner. Welcome in, Dan.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me. Once I found out that two of my favorite guys in the fitness world were having a podcast, I figured I had to nudge you guys to get me on here and chat.
Hey, you were the first person that reached out when we announced this thing, and I said it wouldn't be right if you weren't on the show. So we're glad to have you.
Love it.
So you've got your gyms, and we were speaking before we came on. You just celebrated 10 years at Cutting Edge Fitness, and all the posts that you put on, family is a big thing for you, and you started the gym with your brother. So kind of take me through the process of starting Cutting Edge Fitness, kind of how you saw things out in Washington and kind of what the process was to get to that 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. So mine was a little, I would say, different process than most. I was at a big training gym in the Seattle area that was affiliated with Microsoft. I was doing really well there. I was always one of the top grossing trainers. There's a story I always share during my speaking is I was actually fired from that job about 6 years in, kind of due to some circumstances that were a little bit outside of my control, but definitely unexpected. And I kind of thought I was going to be there for a while. I knew there was something else out there, but I'd never really thought about owning my own gym. I was making good money there. I was pretty comfortable. And honestly, I probably would have stayed there for quite a bit longer if I hadn't got fired. Being fired ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to me because I kind of had to step back, figure out, okay, what are my options? What do I really want to do in this industry? What are my goals? And at that time, I think the stars just aligned, and I'm a big believer in stuff that's meant to happen happens. And that was when I got linked up with Jason Glass, who is the main guy for TPI that does a lot of fitness stuff for them. I went to his mentorship. It's kind of a deep dive with 6 people at his studio down in Vancouver, going over 5-year, 10-year goals, all that kind of stuff. And by the end of that weekend, really the other people in the room just kind of gave me the confidence that I should absolutely be opening up my own gym. And I never really had that confidence going into that. And then I remember leaving that, calling my brother, because my brother was in the fitness industry as well. He's 2 years younger than me. We were working at the same gym. He was still working at the gym that I got fired from. We hopped on the phone and I was like, man, we got to do this. Let's do it. I just got this game plan from Jason. And then at that time, Jason linked me up with Tom Plummer. Talked to Tom. Tom's like, hey, if you can get down to Portland tomorrow, I'll talk to you at the seminar. Drove to Portland the next day, hooked up with Tom. Then there was another Perform Better Summit like a month or two later. Linked up with him and then Rick Mayo when they were working together at that time. And then kind of everything just snowballed from there. And I mean, the main reason I've been able to have success is because of guys like Tom and Rick and Jason. And I know you guys talk a lot about mentors, but like I can't advocate that enough. That's the reason why I've been successful is because of guys like Tom and Rick and Jason. And so, yeah, fast forward, my brother and I decided to open up together. We're about 3 years in. And Tom had kind of warned me like, hey, even if it's with your brother, like partnerships are tough. He's always telling people that partnerships are difficult to make work. And he was right. Luckily, to my brother and I's credit, like we realized a couple years in order to kind of save our relationship, we needed to go opposite directions with the business. So he had another opportunity outside of the fitness world to take a different job. And then I took over all the day-to-day operations about 3 years in. But he was a huge help in getting it opened up. But luckily, it kind of saved our relationships to be able to have one person take it over. And that was me. And then here we are 10 years later with 2 locations and then still growing. So it all kind of just worked out.
It's funny you talk about Tom, and he says, get down to Portland, and who knows whether Tom was actually in Portland or going to be in Portland, or he just said, this is where you have to go to meet me, and if you do it tomorrow, I'll give you all the secrets.
Yeah, it wasn't even in Portland. You're probably right.
Just be there.
Yeah.
But real quick, touching what you said on the family thing is we were talking about just taking trips and stuff. And I think one thing that people make the mistake a little bit of in gym ownership is they don't understand the numbers and kind of financial dynamics of it. I think everybody gets in the fitness industry to help people. That's why we're all here. Like I still love helping people, but I think it's also okay to understand that you can use your gym for a vehicle for both personal and financial freedom. And that's something that has kind of been hammered to me from Tom and Rick from day one. So I've always been able to have my business set up where not everything is reliant upon me day to day. My most important things in my life are my wife and my kids, and I want to be very present in their lives and spend time with them. So I am able to go, take trips and take off for a week and not check email and let my staff take care of everything. And I'm very fortunate for that I can use my gym for that. A lot of that is because of the systems that, Tom and Rick and those guys helped me set up as well.
Expand on that, Dan, because I think that's a huge thing. And I think a lot of the gym owners, operators, it could be a trainer that's looking to go out on their own and open their own facility, things like that. We hear, and you speak a lot and you're out and about, you hear these gym guys go, gosh, oh yeah, I would love to be able to play a round of golf, but who has 4 hours to be able to take off on a Friday? Or I'd love to go on a vacation, but who has time? I can't leave my gym. Everything would fall apart. So what would you say would be some of the key items to implement or systems to have in place in order to allow a gym owner or a manager or even a trainer who's got is thinking, well, if I'm not training, I'm not making money. So to allow them to get out and do those type of things.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's a little bit of a cliche saying, but I think the biggest thing with that is, are you spending time working on your business or in your business? And that's something that's been really hammered home for me for day one. I was pretty lucky with that. I never had to go through a huge growing pain, but most of my time is spent working on the business, versus working in the business. So right now I don't hardly train at all unless I want to. I want to pop in. I would say from day one, the most I was ever training was like 15, 20 hours a week, but there's definitely, it's okay if you still like to train. And I did it for a long time. I think I just got really passionate with like the systems and marketing and business stuff. So I got a little more away from the training, but there's still successful operators that still do a decent amount of training. But there is a direct correlation between how much you're in your business, how much you're the trainer, how much you're the tacticianer, versus how much you're working on your business and really being able to put in systems to be able to grow and, again, take time off your plate and be able to have stuff run without you having to be there from the day to day. So my personal opinion, if you're training more than 15, 20 hours a week as the owner, it's going to be really hard to delegate enough time to be able to also work on the business, to be able to get you off the floor and be able to have the gym not relying upon you. So I think you have to find that delicate balance between how much you're working on your business versus in your business. And then from there, when you're working on your business, making sure you're working on the right things, like putting the right systems in place, trusting your team, delegating stuff, and just making sure that everything can run essentially without you being there. Like I have one of our main coaches does all of our programming now. I take a look at it, make sure I like it, but I'm kind of removed from the programming side, removed from the coaching side unless I want to be. And then I'm spending a lot of time just on the marketing, staff development, employee engagement, all that kind of stuff, which, luckily I don't have any hours where I'm really tied where I have to be in the office, which then allows me to be able to, if I take off for a week, I'm not missing anything.
I think that's almost a leap of faith that gym owners need to make, is because they say, well, I can't stop training, or I can't bring on a number two, right? If you're Batman, you need a Robin. I can't bring on a head trainer to do programming, or I can't bring on an ops manager, because how do I pay them? And if I can't stop training, and it's a catch-22, because you have to stop training in order to increase the marketing, to bring in the new memberships in order to pay them. So it's almost like put the system and strategy in place, take that leap of faith, hire that key, that the who, not how mentality of who do I put in place to make this happen, to free up my time so that I can work more on the business versus in the business.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think it is a leap of faith that you have to take. It is easier, obviously, to do it from the beginning than do it when you're 5 years in. And I was pretty lucky that when I was doing these calls with Tom and Rick to start our business, they were like, the one thing you got to do is it can't be all about you. You can't be the one doing all the training. The business can't be 100% relied upon you. You got to budget in enough money to hire the staff from day one that can take care of the stuff that you're wanting to delegate and stuff. So, it was obviously easier for me because I was able to do that stuff from day one because of Tom and Rick's guidance. But even if you're a couple years in and trying to make that transition, like you said, you just got to be able to allocate the capital to be able to do that, figure it out, and then take the leap of faith and then let it go from there. Because once it's set up, that's ultimately what you want. I don't think anybody wants to have a business where you have to work 60, 70 hours a week in the business. So it is kind of like you said, a leap of faith is a good way to put it. You just have to get the right systems in place and then trust it so that you can build a business that is not all reliant upon you.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing, because I started the other way. So I started this thing as a hobby. I was a firefighter, and in the training world and sort of managing my way through as best I could with no idea, flying totally blind. So I came into these things much later. So everything was relying upon me. And to a certain extent, it's still relying upon me. So I'm in that transition period now, all these years into this. So you have been someone that I have watched and learned from over the years and will continue to even right now, and as we sit here and talk and listen. So those things are huge, and you telling those things and having those mentors like Tom and Rick, and for me, you and Corey, those things are huge to help get me set up to be able to do the things that you're doing, and for us to be able to do the things that we're doing right now here on this podcast.
Yeah, I think with the big mentorship thing too is that, Dan, you worked with Tom and Rick, and I've worked with my mentors, and I know Trey has. Every successful person that I've ever spoken to in the fitness industry has had a mentor, has had somebody to bounce ideas off of, to just ask, am I on the right path? Or somebody that's willing to say no or give them the tough love that they need. And, with you and Justin doing some of these business seminars and things like that, I mean, that, guys, if you're hearing this story and going, yeah, that resonates with me, please reach out to Dan, reach out to find yourself a mentor that is going to help take you, that has done it, that has been through the trenches, that trial and error is very expensive. So if we can help you, if we can help you out in any way, shape, or form, whether it's getting out of a partnership into business or figuring out how do I get out of my business? What are the next steps? How much capital do I actually need? Who's the next employee for me to hire? Dan's a great guy to reach out to and chat with.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think it's important, like you said too, that you got to get with somebody that's going to give you a little bit of tough love. I think we've all met Tom. I think that's the thing I respect probably the most about Tom is he's going to tell it to you how it is, maybe sometimes even too bluntly. But I appreciate that. That helped me a lot because I needed somebody as I was starting to grow these business to be able to, help me kick it in gear and really help me put a game plan going forward that was going to, make me uncomfortable and get me outside of my comfort zone, but also what was needed at the time. And he definitely did that.
Yeah, Tom, there is certainly no filter when it comes to Tom. I've told this story several times, and my first real presentation that I did, I sent it to Tom after the fact, and I said, "Hey, man, rip this thing apart." And so he did, and then he put it into speaker school as what not to do. So, so that is my legacy with Tom Plummer is, if you're going to give a presentation, don't do it like Trey. So, and then a good Rick Mayo story. So the first time I went to Perform Better was down in Orlando, 2018, and I'm with the FMS guys, and I'm just kind of sitting at this table, and Tom is there, and Rick, and several other big guys. Lee Burton was there, and I'm just this little guy at the end of the table. And it's about 3/4 of the way through, they ask me who I am and what my story is. And so I tell a little bit, and then after we eat, we go over into the bar area, and so I'm talking to Rick, and I told him I'm overwhelmed being at this table. So many successful people, and I'm just some guy. And he said, yeah, you are this time. But the next time it'll be a little bit less overwhelming and a little bit less and a little bit less. And then pretty soon it's just going to be normal. And so you better get used to it because you're going to be around here for a while. And that's always stuck with me because he was right. And it's been 7 years, but it's only been 7 years. And that's through COVID. And, so that's like 5 plus 2, that didn't really count. But, having those people that will breathe that life into you and will give you that confidence that means so much. And it is certainly a good part of the reason both of those guys and both of those experiences are a big reason why, we're all sitting here today.
Definitely.
So Dan, with your staffing structure and running, put it this way, running 2 gyms is, I remember Mike Boyle say one time, I asked him about when I was looking at opening a second gym or a third gym like that. And he has 2 locations, and he looks at me, he goes, twice the headache, not twice the revenue. I just thought that was hysterical. And I was like, yeah, but what is obviously you didn't go just open 2 gyms simultaneously. What made you go from one to saying, okay, now I want to open a second one? And what systems, or maybe it is just systems, are critical to being able to do that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And some of the best advice I got from Tom when I was going to open up my second location is whether I'm opening up 2 or 3, it's got to be like I'm opening up 10. Everything's got to be turnkey. The systems and stuff got to be in place. So luckily, something we didn't touch on that I'll share real quick is in between opening our 2 locations in Seattle here, I actually opened up a gym in Montana with a business partner, a guy I played football with in college. He was doing engineering. He got burnt out of engineering, wanted to get in the fitness world, but didn't have a lot of experience. Saw what I was doing in Seattle to bring me on as a partner to kind of help grow things. And I talked to both Tom and Rick about it, figured out the structure of it, and just ended up taking some equity in the company, knowing that we were going to try to build it up after a couple of years and then sell it. But what that really gave me the chance to do is test these systems that I was doing in Seattle in a totally different area. So Seattle's over 1 million people, very tech affluent, very high affluency as far as people. And then in Montana, it's about, the city we were in was like 25,000 people, very rural, totally different. But what I was able to do is take these systems we had in Seattle, put them in Montana, see how they work, tweak stuff, make it better, work with my business partner, Casey, over there to get things up and running. And then that really allowed the transition then to open up the second facility here way easier, because at that point I'd kind of worked out all the kinks everywhere else and with the gym in Montana, and then just had all the operations and systems in place. And like you said, I think at the end of the day, it boils down to having the right systems in place. I knew opening up that second facility, I wasn't going to be there very often. I go there maybe once a week, but if I didn't want to go there during the week, I wouldn't have to. It kind of runs itself, luckily. But you have to have the right systems in place, and then you have to have the right staff in place that you empower to be the people that are, the front-facing part of the business, that are helping run it and be there for the day-to-day. And there's obviously stuff I still have to check on each week at that second location, but for the most part, I'm pretty far removed from that one, and I don't have to be there too much. And that's because we were able to kind of take what we did in Montana, build up these systems, and then put it in place to open up, the second facility. And then we want to open up another one here in the next year or so, and we'd be able to do the same thing that we took from the Montana and the second one.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get into the one gym is crushing it, and then they go open a second location and they realize, well, it was crushing it because if anything happened, that key person, the gym owner, operator, whatever, could just jump in and fix it. And when you can't put 40 hours a week at both locations. So the systems are absolutely key, or it's not going to work, and you'll do both of them only at 70% efficiencies.
Yeah, I think a lot of people make that mistake, and they end up having to go put out fires at both locations and create, like you said, double the headache. So I think if people don't have the right systems in place, that it ends up being a worse thing to open up a second location, for sure.
So for those people who are young or just getting started, or maybe don't have all those things in place, what do you see as the 1 or 2 most crucial systems that absolutely have to be in place to give you the greatest chance of success?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, I'm a big numbers guy. So I think if you don't understand like the numbers in your business, that's where you need to start. Like, I think honestly, running a business is pretty easy if you understand the numbers and what the numbers are showing you. And so some of those numbers, obviously lead generation is a big thing. So you need to have some type of system in place for lead generation, whether that's somebody handling your website, your SEO, your Facebook, that kind of stuff. We luckily have people that do that for us now. Like Corey was saying, that Who Not How book is a great book that I've read and referenced a lot as well. Now I have a lot of who's that are doing our marketing stuff for us that I don't have to do on the day-to-day. But having, the marketing and lead generation sales is one process. And then from there, being able to obviously convert those leads into a trial process and then sell them on a regular membership is huge. So you have to have your trial process in place. And then from there, have a sales process to convert those trials to regular members. And then, kind of on the back end of that, you also have to have a plan in place, especially as you grow. When you're only training 10, 20 people, retention is pretty easy. But when you start having a gym that is 100, 150, 200 members, you definitely have to have a place in place as well for retention. So I think lead generation, sales, and retention are the 3 biggest ones. And then obviously knowing what your trainers are doing on the floor and making sure all your programming is under one umbrella, so it's not just the wild, wild west out there with everybody freestyling stuff, is obviously very important as well. But talking just from the business side, I would say, lead generation to sales process to retention are the 3, kind of big numbers that you need to make sure you have in place outside of the service you're delivering, obviously.
And then how are you tracking them? When are you tracking them? Who's whose ass do you kick if they're not the standards are being met? So I think just having knowing which KPIs are most important to be monitoring. And I think you talk with tons of gyms as well as I do. And that would be the first thing that I would fix with any gym. If it's underperforming 9 times out of 10, they just don't know the numbers. And so
exactly.
When we can open up their eyes to exactly what are the KPIs, what are the standards that they should be achieving, then it's like, oh, there's a moment of clarity. Then it's, okay, now who's responsible for all these? Because 9 times out of 10, it falls right back on that owner's shoulders again, and they have to be able to delegate.
Yeah, and I think you as the owner, like you should be the one that is overseeing all those numbers on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. And then like you said, from there, which ones are underperforming, which ones aren't we hitting, then how do I delegate that to the right person to make sure that gets fixed and we're on track with that. And I think it was Vince Gabriel that maybe said it, but one of the best analogies I ever heard was like the offense, defense, special teams analogy that you would use in football, where offense is marketing, your lead generation, all that kind of stuff. So you have to have kind of like an offensive coordinator or a person that is in charge of the offensive side of thing of getting people in the door. Defense is your retention side of things. So having somebody that's in charge of being able to make sure that you're delivering the right service, retaining your current members. And then the special teams, usually this falls on the owner, maybe a high-end operations manager, is going to be all of your specialty stuff, your finances, your P&L, your bookkeeping, all that kind of stuff. That's the overall like financial picture of the business. But I think having those 3 categories is important in understanding how each one of your staff members fits into those and who's running what. And then you can kind of oversee everything from there and delegate.
So when you first started off, you had the systems in place. What kind of staff did you have? Were your staff numbers at the beginning? Was it just you and your brother? How many people did you have then versus how have you grown, especially your first location, before we kind of get in?
Yeah, so we had one operations manager when we started, which was great. And then we had my brother and I. We were both training maybe 15 or so hours a week. And then we had 3 other coaches. So we had 3 coaches, both of us, and an operations manager from day one, which is more than most people have. But luckily, like I said, that was kind of put in place with us with Tom and Rick, is being able to raise enough money up front to be able to really grow this thing and have the right staff in place. But yeah, outside of us, we had 3 coaches and a full-time operations manager.
You said you raised enough money on the front end. How did you go about doing that? What was your process for that to even get started?
Yeah, it's a funny story. I luckily have experience kind of raising money for gyms in all different areas. For Montana, we just did the standard SBA loan, and that worked out great. But what's funny about our first location that we opened up is we actually got it all through client funding. And so we got several clients that would do between $10,000 to $20,000 each in small loans that were very low interest that we would pay off over 5 years. And I remember the first time I asked a client for 20 grand. For me at the time, that was a ton of money, and I was like, God, I'm gonna ask this guy for like 20 grand, and this is kind of crazy. Tom's like, just do it. You'll be fine, And I asked the guy, and we were very lucky here that we have some very affluent, like Microsoft, kind of very high up tech people. And I asked the first guy for 20 grand, and he's like, yeah, do you want me to bring you like a check tomorrow or just wire it today? Or like, how do you want me to do it? And I was like shocked. And I was like, oh my God, okay, this is easy. And then I go on the next one, they say yes. I go on the next one, they say yes. So we had about 10 client investors. We didn't give up any equity, but investors that gave us loans at the beginning. And then we also had several of those people that just did like 10 grand in prepaid training that would burn off after like 2 years. I don't love having too many people that are under that umbrella, but we had like 5 people that were doing that, and then several other people that did the loans. And so all of our money raised for the first location was all through client funding, which was actually easier than I thought it was going to be. And then obviously we didn't have that option in Montana, just kind of starting up from day one. So that route, we just did the SBA funding. And then our third location, we were able to fund through capital that we had through our first location. So
awesome, man. Yeah. Those are great stories, because I think a lot of people are, I think a lot of people are undercapitalized.
Definitely.
when we come and work with them, and we realize that, wow, they weren't set up for success from day one. So that it was an uphill battle from go.
Mm-hmm.
But 2, I think a lot of people are nervous about transitioning from that, head Equinox trainer or wherever they might be to opening and owning their own training facility, because it's this daunting number. I need $500,000 to open a kick-ass training gym. how am I going to do that? Well, write a kick-ass business plan, go get yourself an SBA loan, or, talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to some clients, and see if you can't raise enough money that way. But again, that business plan, the numbers, the staffing, all the things that you were set up with is what led to your success. If you just borrow money from people and you don't have that plan in place, you're just going to end up having fewer friends that you
Yeah,
owe a
we would
lot
have
of
been out
money
of
to.
business pretty quick. Yeah, for sure.
Now, of all those people that gave you those startup loans, are any of them still training with you?
Yeah, actually, because it was funny because we had our 10-year party last week, and
Right.
a lot of those people were at that party. And I would say there was one or two clients that were very close with my brother that once he left weren't part of the picture as far as the investment thing go anymore. But I would say 75-80% of them are still around training with us today. So
No.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's huge.
Definitely. Having those relationships and the people that have been there from day one, those are the people, sort of those foundational people that really, make the gym a special place, that have
Hmm.
been there and that are the true believers and that will pound the drum for you from day one until, day end. So that's a cool story. So when you got in, you got the systems in place. How quickly did you grow? How was the growth when you got you started in Redmond, correct?
Yeah, Redmond area. We were in Kirkland, but yeah, same
Yeah.
same
Okay.
area. Yeah.
So when you came in, how was the training back then? You guys were doing semi-private training, and it was first in the area. I'm trying to remember from your posts and things.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And how did that? So how did you take the market? How was the market, and then how did you guys grow from that?
Yeah, so we started semi-private from day one. We were obviously not one of the original ones that Tom worked with on semi-private, but we've been doing it for 10 plus years now. So we were definitely the only ones in our area doing it at that time. The biggest transition for us with the semi-private is actually a lot of our clients, because my brother and I were at a gym, before that together doing one-on-one, is we had to actually convince a lot of our one-on-one people to downgrade to semi-private so that we could grow and scale and not have 40 one-on-one clients. And so we actually had like little different transition than most people. Most people have to try to get like their group people to try out semi-private. We had to get our one-on-one people to scale down and do semi-private instead of one-on-one. So luckily we grew pretty fast because my brother and I had a pre-existing client base that we were able to bring in with us. I had already been removed from that gym for over a year, so I had no non-compete. My brother had a non-compete, but we had worked with our lawyers kind of knowing that they were probably going to try to come after us if we did. So we had all of our ducks in a row with that, had no issues with that. So we started with about 45 to 50 clients, like right off the bat, which is pretty rare, so we were pretty lucky in that sense. And then I would say actually most of our growing pains, which luckily Tom and Rick helped us through, was then, okay, we got this 50 really quick. Now we're starting to make some money. Like, what are the systems now we need to have in place to be able to get new leads coming in the door? And at that time, like, Facebook marketing was pretty easy. You could get a ton of leads if you just somewhat knew what you were doing. Obviously, that's different now, but we were getting a lot of leads through Facebook, through social media. And for us, it was just trying to now figure out, okay, all this growth is coming at us. Like, how do we get the systems in place to be able to manage leads and make sure all these trial people are getting followed up with, make sure our original people aren't feeling left out, so they're leaving, the retention side of things. And so a lot of our growing pains in the first couple of years was being able to kind of figure out how do we navigate the growth of all this. And luckily that's when we really started working a ton with Tom and Rick of like, how do we figure out the lead gen and the sales and all the systems we kind of talked about. But we were pretty lucky. We grew pretty early, but then from there we had to figure out, okay, what does this growth look like and how do we manage it and get the right stuff in place? And then from there, once my brother was out of the picture, then how do I handle all this stuff by myself as well? So that was a majority of our growing pains the first several years.
Did you guys divide? You take the marketing side, he take lead generation. How did you guys divide those efforts to make sure that everybody was taken care of?
Yeah, at the beginning we divided a lot of stuff up. My brother was a lot more in the day-to-day just kind of infrastructure stuff, and I was doing a lot more of the lead generation and that side of thing, because I had already been like connected with Tom and Rick a little bit more than my brother had been, and kind of had been working with them and that side of stuff. So we did kind of divide and conquer at the beginning, but that also, just being in a partnership, brought among challenges as far as like who's pulling their weight, who's not, who's doing what, and who's in charge of what. And so I think luckily, like I said, a couple of years in, we had that conversation to realize that one person needed to kind of oversee everything, and then we could delegate it from there. And so that's when I started to take over all the day-to-day stuff. But at the beginning, yeah, we definitely kind of divided and conquered stuff until we got on each other's nerves too much, and then we realized that needed to change, and somebody needed to take over.
Is your brother a younger brother?
Yep, younger brother. So there's those issues too. I always want to be in charge. I'm the older brother, so it made sense for me to take it over being the older brother.
I have a younger brother who's very successful in his own world, but I couldn't imagine in a partnership with him. Yeah.
Yeah,
good for you guys for making it last 3 years.
It was good though, and like I said, like I said, it truly did save our relationship. So stepping back, I'm very, very thankful that we were both aware enough to realize that something needed to change. Otherwise, it would have ended badly. So
you can still go play golf and beat him.
Yep, we golf all the time.
So you guys, and I'm glad you brought that part up. But you guys are traveling to play golf all the time. I see these beautiful courses that you play on. So.
Yeah.
Are you the best golfer in the family? If not you, then who is? And how did the family golf outings go?
Ooh, well, luckily my dad and I had us golfing when we were younger. So my dad and I would beat both of us till we were maybe like 13 or 14. And now, unfortunately, I think my dad would admit that it's not a very close competition when him or my brother are playing. So between me and my brother, we go back and forth. Of course, I'm going to say I'm the better golfer. If you ask him, he's going to say he's the better golfer. But we're pretty equal. And now we do team up for some tournaments around here and play together as well. So that's fun to be on the same team. But yeah, it's always a heated battle when we're on the golf course. Who's going to win each day, for sure. And yeah, we were lucky enough. We just went to Bandon Dunes. It took my dad down to Bandon Dunes in Oregon the last 2 years, which was really cool as a family golf trip to be able to take him down there and experience. The place is awesome. So
yeah, no kidding. It's always ranked in the top 5 best courses in America. Isn't it?
Yeah, they have 5 of the top 100 courses in the same place. So it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, we've talked about the family aspect of it, and you and your wife, your kids, you're taking trips all the time. You've set yourself up to give your kids an awesome childhood. And I think that speaks to what the industry, what the profession, we were having a conversation of, industry versus profession with Martin last week, but the things that you're doing show that this can be such a great profession, and you can create the life that you want. So talk a little bit about how fitness and owning a business and setting the systems up has created the life for your family that you envision living.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate in that sense. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people, like, the light that gets shed on business owners is like, man, you're there 67 hours a week, you're grinding, like you have no time to do anything else. And luckily, like, my schedule is kind of the exact opposite of that. Like I said, luckily, because I had guys like Tom and Rick that kind of helped me set that up from day one. But like, my main focus is my wife and my kids. I coach a ton of my kids' sports. We take a lot of trips, a lot of family vacations together. My normal schedule is I'm usually in the office from like 9 to 3. Like, I'll drop them off at school, go in, work till about 2:30 or 3, and then I'll go pick them up from school. And then my wife and I are taking them to different practices and all that kind of stuff. But I think part of it is also, my staff knows that. My staff knows that family is very important to me. They're okay with me leaving during that point. So I'm delegating stuff to them and paying them to be able to do what they need to do inside the business. And then we also try to create as much work-life balance for all of our employees as well. Like, we've all learned in the fitness industry that they can be brutal with split shifts and working 70 hours a week. So like, none of our staff works more than 40 hours a week. That none of them work split shifts. They all have what I would consider pretty reasonable schedules. Sometimes we have some younger staff, and sometimes one of my managers and I are like, dude, these guys need to work some split shifts and work like 60 hours a week to kind of really feel what we felt coming up. Because we have some guys that start with us right out of college that are like, oh yeah, man, I just work from like 6 to noon and then I'm off for the day, or I work from 1 to 7 and I'm out. And so, they have a fairly good schedule, all things considered. Right. But yeah, it's a big part. Like, we definitely emphasize the family dynamic, of everything in the business, so that there's not any like tension with me leaving and my staff being like, where's he going? He's not here again. Everybody kind of gets the gist of it. And like I said, I was able to put those systems in place because of Tom and Rick, but that was always my end goal, is like, hey, I don't want to be in here 50, 60 hours a week. I want to be able to spend a lot of time with my kids. And I think hopefully that's something, they're all young now, they're 10, 8, and 6, but hopefully as they get older, they'll realize that, that sacrifices we made to be able to spend a lot of time with them, and that, hopefully maybe that'll inspire them down the road to be able to go into a profession where they can do something similar, or who knows. But hopefully they see that as a good example, because I definitely, my focus is definitely to spend as much time with them, and my wife as possible. My wife does work as well. She works remotely from home, and she gets jealous of my schedule sometimes, because sometimes if I don't have a lot I have to do during the day, I'll also just go hit the golf course. And she's like, "Wait, did you golf again today?" I was like, "Yeah, but I did it during my work schedule." She's like, "I'm not mad. I'm just jealous that you can do that with your schedule." And I'm like, "Yeah, So yeah, I'm very fortunate in that sense. Don't get me wrong, I do still have to work, but I can kind of do it all on my terms, which is the ultimate goal of owning a business, to be able to do things on your terms."
Yeah. And we can understand and appreciate that. And we hope that we can convey that to the audience out there, that it's not just all play and no work out in Washington State, but that just shows what it can be. And if you set these things up right and you do things the right way, that you can have a life like this. And I can speak from me and my wife and the conversations that we've had. She sees pictures and she's like, "I want that." And your kids will appreciate it one day. They don't know any better now because it's all they know, but they will certainly appreciate it one day.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that's the number one message I'm trying to convey when I speak, is like, hey, this is what's possible trying to help people be able to do that, because that's what Tom and Rick did for me, and none of my stuff would have been possible without them. So now I'm trying to pay it forward and do that for the next generation.
Yeah, well, huge shout outs to Tom Plummer and to Rick Mayo. We've talked to Tom a little bit, and Corey has, and hopefully we can get Rick out here eventually. It's been great having you on the show, because we talked about it, and I think it was the very first thing I put out. And probably 3 minutes after I put it out on Instagram, you sent me a message and said, two of my favorite people, so you better have me on. So, and I pull up the picture. We had Rob and Aaron on a couple weeks ago, and I pulled up the picture of us, riding back from Chris's house, 9 deep in the Tahoe, with Rob and Aaron and Alan, Rachel Cosgrove, and Jason. I'm sitting in the floorboard, and then you're right behind me, and Rick Trout. But that's what it's about, the relationships and the friendships. And, whether you're in Danville, Virginia, or Clarksburg, Maryland, or Kirkland, Washington, it's it's really a small world in our profession. And, it's the friendships that make this thing really go. So keep doing what you're doing, man.
I totally agree, man. And real quick, not taking more time, but I think you and I remember this. Like, the first time you and I connected really was we were at Chris's house for that Perform Better speaker thing after one of the seminars. And you and I were sitting back and saying that exact same thing. Like, man, how cool is it that in this industry, like literally all the biggest names in the whole industry are at this place that we're at right now. And we're included in this with all these guys. And it was kind of a cool moment, I think, for both of us, just sitting there and realizing that we have access to all these kind of people, and we're moving our careers up into the same breath as some of those guys. And there's not a lot of industries where you can do that. And so I thought that was a really cool, I never take that for granted. And I know that was something that you and I, Trey, shared during that experience, about how cool that was, that we were included in all that stuff. And it's all because of relationships, like you said. So yeah,
it's about building those relationships and having a place where we can sit and chat for 43 minutes about histories and stories in life and the connections that, I remember when we first met, even before going out to Chris's, we first met in the lobby at the Omni in Providence. That's where we first met. And that was that same night. And then we ended up, talking and having that conversation, and then riding back in the Tahoe with Rob and everybody else. And then here we are just 2 years later. So that's the beauty part of it. And hopefully it's only going up from there. So,
Yep, definitely. I think that's the coolest thing about this podcast, is that you guys are getting all those stories and information out to be able to help people and expedite the process of just moving up and building relationships in the fitness industry. And I think that's huge. So kudos to you guys as well.
Well, I appreciate it. And we're just going to see how big we can make this thing, and how small we can shrink this world down and connect everybody.
Love it.
Yeah. Well, we thank you, Dan, for joining us on the Coaches Unscripted podcast. We hope today's stories have inspired and empowered you in your coaching journey. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with fellow coaches, connect with us on Instagram at Coaches Unscripted Podcast. You can then continue the conversation and stay updated on future episodes. Follow Dan on Instagram at DCleck12. So until next time, for Corey Smallwood, Dan Kleckner, I'm Trey Belcher. Keep coaching from the heart and building strong communities.